of course, February is also Black History Month, and every month is Black History Month, but we get to celebrate it here. And I've decided for myself that for my own practice, I am going to each week be diving into a book, or perhaps even revisit books by Black authors that have taught me, that have challenged me, that have opened me up. And since it is the start of February, I chuckled when I heard Reverend Masando in the opening give his sacred reading from the very same book, we did not know this, that I am bringing in for us today. And really, again, it is author, feminist, icon, Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks. If you don't know the work of Bell Hooks, I invite you into it. She made her transition this past December. She was only 69 years old. And it was really hard for a lot of us. And so it just felt so beautiful to bring her in. And I'm going to be talking about something from her book, All About Love, which was from exactly... I'm glad we didn't quote the same things, brother, because that would have been, anyway, would have been fine. But anyway, so I'm bringing her in today. And so Bell Hooks was a woman who prayed every day. She prayed every day, and she was centered in the idea of love. She was absolutely brilliant, and in her book, she talks about a love ethic, having a love ethic. She taught that we can do this by committing to give our all to relationships, by embracing a global vision wherein we see our lives and our fate as intimately connected to those of everyone else on the planet. And this so closely aligns with our own vision here at the New Thought Center for Spiritual Living. Our vision is recognizing our oneness. We envision a world that works for everyone and all creation. And in order to do this, we use our mission, which is to provide spiritual tools for personal and global transformation. So our vision here at the center is rooted in a love ethic. Deep healing happens in an environment that espouses a love ethic. Today, my talk is titled A New Love, and it addresses two specific ways that we can participate in our own healing and the healing of each other. That's what I'm going to talk about before I answer some questions from you. So Dr. Hooks wrote, "Rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion." Healing is an act of communion. So, many years ago, there was a kid who was a junior in high school. He was failing out of school, dropping out of school. He never went to class. He was really on a bit of a downward spiral. He most likely wasn't even going to graduate. He was being raised by a single mom. Things were really tough. But his mom asked him, she said, "Would you just do me a favor? Would you just at least take the SATs? Would you just take the SAT test?" Depending on where you are in the country, or the ACT test might be similar. "Would you just take the SAT test?" He said, okay, fine, like it's going to do anything but fine. He took the SAT test. Turns out he scored a 1480. You can only get 1600 on an SAT test. And so he actually scored in the 98th percentile. He had no idea. His mom even asked him if he cheated. And he said, no. So this was this moment in his life, this huge moment in his life. He decided to go back to class regularly. He decided to focus. He made friends, a whole new set of friends, kids who were engaged in their own education and dedicated to it. Teachers welcomed him in. He felt at home there for the first time in his life. And as such, with hard work, he graduated. He ended up going to a community college for 2 years, and then he went to Wichita State, and then he went to an Ivy League college. 12 years later, He was a very well-known, very successful magazine entrepreneur. And 12 years later, he got a piece of mail from the SAT board that was doing a periodic review. And they let him know that he was one out of 13 people who got the wrong score. He didn't get a 1480. He got a 740. Now, there are so many things about this story that are so great. You know, this idea that we can always change our mind, this idea that we are not our past, this idea that our behavior creates our success in the world, this idea that principle is not bound by precedent. If you are a student of metaphysics, Thomas Troward taught this to Ernest Holmes. And it was this idea that if you're going down the same street every day, don't expect to arrive at a different place. You have an opportunity to go down a different street and arrive at a different place. This is what he did. There were so many things. He said people thought that his life started when he got the score of 1480, and he said, no, my life didn't start then. My life started when I started to act like a student who got a 1480. There's so many things about this story that are so great. And when I began to dig deep into it and peel back the layers, what touched my soul the deepest wasn't the fact that he got the score that he got or didn't get. It didn't have anything to do with anything that I just mentioned. It was the fact that healing doesn't happen in isolation. That by his choice to engage in community and for them to welcome him in, that is where the healing for him happened. The healing for him happened in communion, in community. That's the thing. That's where we heal, my friends. We heal in community. Just look at 12-step programs. Look at group therapy. Look at retreats. I'm so excited. We're actually going to start talking about rescheduling, setting a date for our rescheduled retreat, our community-wide retreat. That's where healing happened. And, the opportunity for us, really, is to ask ourselves, where in our own life are we not reaching out? Where in your own life are you perhaps struggling and you're doing it alone? Maybe you are afraid to reach out. Maybe there is a certain element of perfectionism that is happening within you. Maybe you're hesitating to engage in support because you're feeling as though it's too vulnerable. Remember, my friends, vulnerability is actually courage. When we reach out and we choose to heal in communion, in community, we are being vulnerable, and in our vulnerability, we are being courageous. The thing is that when we do this, just like that kid in high school, when we choose to engage in community, when we choose to engage where two or more are gathered, healing happens. When we choose to engage, angels among you, like at his school, will circle around in support of you. So for those of you listening in real time, a reminder, if any questions are popping up for you, I invite you to put them in the chat box, and we'll chat about it later. So the story about this idea of love and the love ethic and how we heal in community got me thinking even more deeply about how it is that we commune with others, other ways that we commune with people, how it is that we heal together. It's important to acknowledge that in New Thought, our healing modality is our word. We teach and we affirm, and we really live into the power of our word. We teach that our words matter. They have impact, and they make an imprint on the world and on our own experience. We know that affirmative prayer, for example, works. Science teaches us that. But what I'd like to invite you into today is, in addition to the opportunity to reach out to others, is a way to do that on the other side of things. And this is such a huge part of a love ethic. I don't think we talk enough in our teaching, or really in society, about the power of listening. Yes, our word is so important, but listening is just as important. Deep, deep listening is a supreme act of love. It opens us, it changes us, it heals us. The Spanish writer Jorge Luis Borges, who went completely blind at the age of 55, which gave him a very unique perspective, said, "The soul is contained in the human voice." The soul is contained in the human voice. And the more that I sit with this idea, the more that I'm drawn into the conscious practice of listening as a healing modality. So often when we talk with people, we're just thinking about the next thing we're going to say. Anybody? We're just thinking, we're just kind of like waiting to get a word in. We're waiting for them to take a breath so we can get a word in. And in doing this, we miss so much, my friends. We can't hear their soul. We are drowning it out to make our point. That is pointless. When we do this, and we humans, we do this all the time, we miss the opportunity to meet their divinity. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German Lutheran pastor and theologian. He died at the hands of the Nazis. His story is extraordinary if you don't know it. In his book, Life Together, he wrote, "Many people are looking for an ear that will listen. The person who can no longer listen to their brother will soon be no longer listening to God either. This is the beginning of the death of the spiritual life." Listening is a supreme act of love. We often think of spiritual growth, as growing, as going to the next thing, the next moment, the next point, the next principle, the next class, the next discovery, the next manifestation, the outside world. We think of spiritual growth often as the next thing. The fact of the matter is spiritual growth happens when we deepen in the spot we are in right now. That is when we grow spiritually. It is never out there, on to the next thing I can check off my list, my spiritual to-do list. No, it happens when we deepen into the truth of spirit that lives within each one of us. And one of the most effective ways to do that is to listen. Not only to our own inner wisdom, but to the inner wisdom of the people around us, even in their pain, even in their challenge, even in their difficulty. If you think about it, that means then that whoever is placed in front of us right where we are is the catalyst for our spiritual growth. Jesus of Nazareth said, "Let those with ears hear." He was talking about listening with the ear behind the ear. He was talking about listening to the soul of the person in front of you. So if you can consciously create a place of safety for another human being, their unique divine light will be revealed to you. And here's the thing that's the most beautiful about all of this. It won't be revealed to you in factual thinking and making their point. It will be revealed to you in their moments of vulnerability. In those moments where another person is vulnerable to you, where you are witnessing their love, that is how their soul will find you, and you will meet God in them. Even if you have nothing in common at all. even if you have differing opinions. If you listen with the ear behind the ear, if you let go of needing to be right, if you listen with the ear behind the ear, God is in there. Spirit is in them because God is happening through each one of us right where we are. Spirit happens through us, not to us. We don't want to grab it. That doesn't happen. God happens through me. God happens through you. God happens through each one of us if we are awake enough and brave enough to stop and just listen. The more that we can listen to each other, the more that we can be a catalyst not only for our spiritual growth, but for theirs. Wherever two or more are gathered, healing can happen. So this week, my friends, first, seek the support of others, and second, listen for the heart of the people around you. And this is how we can participate in a love ethic this week. Do you have any questions? Did that bring up any questions for anybody? So now I'm going to take a few questions. Thank you so much, Sarah. This is exciting. Oh, I don't know which is which. We have some from Facebook, some from YouTube. This is so exciting. This is wonderful. Okay. Let me just see this. Yes. Yes, these are so great. Oh my gosh. Okay, what to do, what to choose. How do we create a love ethic? How do we get to a place where love is a natural response? This is great. How do we get to a place where love is a natural response? The way we get to a place where love is a natural response is by loving ourselves. When we are loving ourselves, when we are listening to ourselves, when we are nurturing ourselves, when we are not beating ourselves up, when we are engaging in community, wherever that is, spiritual community, self-help community, wherever that might be, and we are learning to release the self-hatred and step into a place of alignment, of love, that is how we create more love. That is how we live in a love ethic. You know, I spoke earlier about perfectionism. So many of us get so caught up in perfectionism, that inner critic, that inner voice that keeps us from loving ourselves unconditionally. Gloria Steinem said, perfectionism is internalized oppression. When we can release our perfectionism, we live more in the place of love. We live more in the place of love. Let's see. Oh, there's more on the other page. Okay. Could you speak more about how our word makes an imprint on our world? Yes. How our word makes an imprint on our world. I'm going to invite you to just start by thinking about a time when you were little, or maybe you were an adolescent. Maybe you, like the man in the story, when you were in high school, and someone said something about you or to you that was unloving, that was cruel. How did that impact your life? Start there. Everything that we choose to say makes an imprint. Everything that we choose to speak makes an impact. And so I think often we can go back. I know for me, I can go back to those places and I can be like, wow, it was one little offhanded remark. You know that? Do you know that? One little offhanded remark, maybe even said in passing, that can send us in a trajectory of self-hate so quickly. This creates more harm, more pain in the world. Mind our mind, and as we mind our mind, we mind the words we speak. And so if you are thinking right now in this moment like, oh crap, I've said a lot of bad stuff to people, what a beautiful opportunity to step into a love ethic for yourself, to forgive yourself, to lean into the place of grace, and to remember that love speaks through us. My word for God is love. I have a long relationship, I shared this a few weeks ago, with the word love. I am dedicated to being a witness to love. Thank you again, Brian Harris, for that great song. A witness to love, a witness in the silences, and a witness in the pain. Because love is always there if you listen with the ear behind the ear. Let's see. All right, another question. Do you think healing is happening in our world given the unsettled events of our recent past? Oh man. It's a resounding yes. It's a resounding and holy and sacred yes. And it's painful. Healing is not easy. Anyone who tries to tell you it is doesn't know what they're talking about. Now, healing happens in an instant. When it happens, it's healed, it's done. But healing something is a process. It's a process. It's a process of turning to love. And us humans fight that. We just do. I could sit up here and say, oh yeah, healing is easy. Just affirm it away. That's nonsense. It's metaphysical malpractice. Healing takes time and dedication, like the boy in the story who decided to go back to school, who decided to apply himself, who decided and was met with love. Healing happens in agreement with the divine, and it is a process, and our planet is in the process of healing, and in this process, all this muck is coming up, all this shadow, all this stuff is coming up for us to look at, which is painful. But as we look at it from this place of love, we liberate it and we allow it to fully heal, to be released, and in its place, love occurs, love heals, love rises. You see? Yes. Healing is happening, and it requires that we look at it. You've heard me say we must name it to transcend it. If we look at what is hurting us, it has no more power. And so when we look at the things that are coming up right now to be healed, when we really look at them, when we learn from them, they have no power so that they can dissipate. So yes. Let's see. There's many questions. We're in the back. Oh, there's lots of questions. Thanks for your questions. I'm going to do one more. I want to answer all these questions. Oh, golly. All right. How do we set aside anger or pain and deeply listen to people we feel betrayed by? Oh, that's a great one. How do we set aside anger or pain and deeply listen to people we feel betrayed by? This is deep for me. Like all of you, I have felt great betrayal in my life. And it's really hard. It's really hard. The first thing is to name it. I felt betrayed. I feel betrayed. And then, my friends, the spiritual tool is to remember that underneath that betrayal was pain in them, fear in them, and underneath that betrayal and pain and fear is God. That's how we do it. If we can simply remember their spirit, their God self, underneath all the pain, all the betrayal, all the crap, Underneath all of that is spirit. There is no more God in me or God in you or God in them. It's equal. And even in their betrayal, if you can listen with the ear behind the ear, underneath it is grace for you. I discovered that for myself. Forgiveness is huge. It's why I teach several times a year workshops or classes on forgiveness. It's everything. But start where you are. Start where you are. Name it. And if you can just remember that underneath that betrayal is pain, underneath that pain is fear, underneath that fear is spirit in them.